many of you have a smartphone? Can I see a show of hands? How many of you are going to admit to having just checked it during the break? You didn't. You see? One who didn't. That's novel these days. How many of you checked it within an hour of getting up this morning? How about within an hour of going to bed last night? The thing is that by being connected all the time, we're having a big impact on ourselves, but we're also having a big impact on others. And not just our families, but our peers, our colleagues, our subordinates. When you innocently clear out your inbox on Saturday morning, think about that peer, or worse, your subordinate, who's on the soccer field with their kids. And they're checking in just in case something important comes up, and they see your email, and they pause. Maybe they respond. But it's this kind of impact that we're having on each other. And I think it's escalated. I call it now the cycle of responsiveness. You know, there really are some legitimate external factors. It is true the client might call, and it is true the customer might need something. And one of the things I hear all the time from my exec ed students is, I manage across time zones, and I know many of us do. And to compete in the global world, we have to answer to some of these, certainly if we're going to be competitive, and our competitors are doing this. The problem is that because of these external demands, we create a culture of responsiveness in our organizations. This sense that we should respond and we should always be checking because something might come up. And so how many of you have gotten an email late at night or on the weekend? It was not urgent. Nobody needed a response, but you responded, right? And why do you do that? Maybe to prove that you were committed and you were there had it been one of those important emails. Maybe you did it because, you know, it's a lot easier to just clear it out of your inbox. So get rid of it, right? Maybe you did it because it's become core to who you are to respond to these things. Maybe we should go so far as to say that you're addicted. But actually, it doesn't really matter why you did it. What has just happened is you've signaled to everyone else that you can find me outside the normal work hours, right? And soon we come to expect that we can find each other all the time, day and night, over the weekends. And so we don't have an incentive internal to our teams and organizations to actually try to prioritize and plan and get our work done during those normal hours. Because we know that if something comes up, especially if it's a crisis at work, we can always find everyone, right? And so what I want you to think about is last week. How many of you had a request that came up that you responded to after hours? Right? And for many of you, I would presume you might even tell me it was urgent. Right? But even if it was urgent, the question I want you to think about is not was it urgent, but did it have to be urgent? Because that's really the question. Had you planned and prioritized, had you worked differently with your teams, your organizations, would have it had to be? And what I find over and over is that many, many such requests are not urgent or don't have to be urgent. And so where I first discovered this cycle of responsiveness is I'm an ethnographer by training. And so I go out into organizations and I just study what do people do all day and why. And so I was doing a research project at the Boston Consulting Group. And I said, you know, I think you guys are caught in a cycle of responsiveness. You keep telling me the client is the reason you're on, but actually you guys are calling each other all the time. It's rarely the client that's actually the problem, but I know it's in the name of the client. So I said to them, I'd like to run an experiment to see if we could break this cycle. And I thought I had such a small, little, clever experiment. All I wanted was one team. You know, they work in teams. These teams last anywhere from 3 to 6 months. I said just one team for the duration of the project. And I just want this team to do 2 small things. One, I want them to share a collective goal. And that goal is they're all going to turn off one night a week, starting at 6 o'clock. I mean, how tough can that be? Of course, I want it to be predictable time off. So first by off, I mean off. I really mean off. Like, I don't want you using your wireless devices. In fact, at 6 o'clock, I want you to put them away and not check them till you wake up the next morning. Really off. And I want it to be predictable. So I don't want you to look back at yesterday and say, oh, well, yeah, no, it turns out I didn't need my wireless device since 6 o'clock. I want you to be able to plan. So I want you to be able to say, next Tuesday is my night off, and I want you to tell your kid you're going to be at their softball game, and I want you to be there. And not only do I want you to be there, I don't want you to just be there. I want you to really be there, because there's no wireless technology, no checking in, no worry about anything else. So why is that such a good goal? Why do I want that at BCG? Because that, for them, was a stretch. These are people who do not turn off at 6 o'clock. The idea of turning off at 6 o'clock was really threatening, but it should be doable. I mean, the truth is it's not really the client who very often calls after 6 o'clock. And so I want this, but in other work I've done subsequent to BCG, that actually was an extreme goal. And for other organizations, maybe it's an afternoon off that really pushes you. It can be an email blackout period. It can be thinking time within the normal workday. Whatever it is, it's something that's a stretch but doable. It's going to cause you to challenge your assumptions about, does it really have to be this way? It also has to be something that's personally valued. Now, BCGers travel a lot. And they don't necessarily want a night off not in their home city. I heard a lot of whining about that. Why would I want a night off? My family's in Boston, and now I'm in Indianapolis. Like, come on, Leslie, you're supposed to be about helping work life. But nobody questioned that if we could have more predictability and control in their lives, that their life would actually be better. So they valued what we were trying to do. It also had to be collective. I wanted every single member of the team, from the most senior to the most junior, to take a night off. And I felt very strongly about this because if they all don't do it, there's an incentive to cheat. Because how do we value people at BCG? We value you because you don't take a night off. So what I want you to do is countercultural. So everyone has to participate, and it has to be shared. So what do I mean by shared? It's not just legitimate to leave and turn off at 6 o'clock. We're going to work together as a team to make sure that everybody else on the team can do this. And we're going to share the responsibility, because what I really want is to force a conversation about, why are we doing this? And does it have to be this way? And could it be different? And the goal also, I like it because it's concrete and measurable. So that's all I want, simple. One night off, 6 o'clock, and one other thing. I want them to have a conversation. They have case team meetings. They get together every week. They don't always all show up. So I say this meeting has to be mandatory. The client is not more important than this meeting. Nothing is more important in your work life than this meeting. Because if we're going to rethink together how we work, we better all be there. So it's mandatory, but I just want to tack on 30 minutes to your regular case team meeting where you're supposed to be anyways. And I want you to do two things. I want you to talk about the calendar. Did you actually take your nights off last week? And if not, why not? What could we do differently to make sure we can do it next week? And I also want you to look at the calendar and plan ahead. And I want you to see, next Wednesday, now we have a big deliverable. And it's Jim's night off on Tuesday, and Jim is important to that deliverable. So how are we going to plan ahead and make sure Jim has his night off on Tuesday and we deliver to the client? The only other thing I want you to do in this 30 minutes is I want you to engage in the pulse check. And this is just a rating on 4 basic questions. And imagine, I have this highly analytical group of consultants, and I want them to talk about how they're feeling. And I want them to rate it from a smiley face to a blue, crying, anguished face. And I just want them to go around the room and pick which of these faces. How are they feeling? Are they delivering to the client? Are they personally learning and developing? And is this sustainable, the way that they're working? Okay, so that's all I ask for. I think it's reasonable. 1 team, 1 night off for the duration of the project, a half an hour conversation. So the head of the Boston office, who by now I know fairly well, right? I've been there for a year doing this ethnographic research, and I wouldn't say he's fond of me, but he's tolerating my presence. He says, yeah, Leslie, I agree. That cycle of responsiveness is interesting, and I see that we're caught in it. And the experiment you want to do is academic and okay. Not on any of my teams, but if you can find some other partner, I won't kick you out. So I spent 6 months walking around BCG, asking every partner I know and I don't know, wouldn't you like to do my little experiment? Finally, I found what you might think of as a sucker, but finally I found a partner who, he's just a junior partner, he's just been recently promoted and he has 3 little kids. And he says, if I can't have one night off a week, I probably shouldn't be at this firm. So let's give it a try. And he's doing this because he actually believes it might help him. He believes it might help his team. And he actually thinks maybe if we succeed, we'll help the organization. So let's try. So his project manager is a very command and control style leader. He's not getting very good upward feedback, actually quite poor upward feedback. And now he learns that he might have a Harvard Business School researcher traipsing around after him, seeing what he's doing. Exactly. He didn't think this was a good idea. And so he tells me, I'm the eyes and the ears, the arms and the legs of the client. They cannot live without me. I cannot possibly turn off one night a week. The other 3 consultants on the team, one of them, and I forgot to say this is a team based in Boston, and they're flying out first flight Monday morning, and they're flying back last flight Thursday night, going to Indianapolis. One of the guys on the team says, I happen to have a really good friend in Indianapolis. I didn't think I'd get to see him at all. This is going to be great. I'm actually going to be able to make a plan with my friend and see them. Great. I like the idea. The woman on the team happens to be writing her graduate school applications, and she says, I might actually get some work done. Great. And then there's a guy on the team, and he's married to a doctor. She's in Boston, and he gets very little time with her. And he makes it perfectly clear to me that a night in Indianapolis, in a city where there's absolutely nothing to do, he doesn't want. He wants every precious moment he can have with his wife in Boston. And I say, no, I promise. It's not about less time in Boston. You're going to get a night off in Indianapolis as well. First of all, he really thinks there's nothing to do in Indianapolis. There's nothing to do on your night off. And he wants none of this. And he doesn't believe me for a moment that this is going to actually not spill over to his life in Boston. Finally, begrudgingly, maybe to my good fortune, because BCG is a little bit hierarchical, they agree, because the partner's on board, that they're going to try this. So it's the project manager's first night off, and there's a lot of grumbling. He's going to do it once, and only once. He's going to try just this one night off. And so he describes to us the next morning what happened. So it's 6 o'clock, he leaves, he's driving back to the hotel, and he says to himself, what am I going to do? I never been off so early. And, I'm in Indianapolis. So he says, I think I'll work out. I'm not hungry, so let's go to the gym. And this is a guy who actually was very fit. He talks about in his former years. And now, it's hard to get in a workout while you're on the road. And so he's delighted with the idea. He's going to go to the gym. And he gets on the treadmill and he starts running. And he does bring his smartphone. And he has this urge to check it. But he says, you're going to be so proud of me. I didn't check it. I said, I am proud of you. And he keeps running, and he runs 10 kilometers. He gets off, and he feels great. He says, I haven't run that far when I was on the road ever. And then he goes to call his wife. And they have a very brief call, and she goes to get off the phone. And he says, no, honey, today I can stay on the phone. And so they actually talk for half an hour, and he says, I had a wonderful conversation with my wife. Then he ordered room service and went to bed early. He comes in the next day, and he says, I think I have to admit something. Maybe there's something to this night off. So I said, okay, well, maybe we're making progress here. And so now my friend who's married to the doctor, it's his night off, and for my good fortune, he has a very bad sunburn. And so he actually thinks the first night, good news, I can go back and take care of my sunburn. So he's happy to leave at 6 o'clock. But in the weeks that follow, he's not happy. Not happy at all. And he's very resistant. He feels like the work is not changing, like things are spilling over to his life at home. I've promised we're going to abort the experiment if that happens. And we have an incredibly important team meeting. We all get together. I will never forget this meeting. And we talk about what should we do? Because by now, everyone else on the team's actually had several nights off and has come to realize that a night off in Indianapolis is not so bad. Turns out there's a lot of things you can do. The list is yay long of all the things, including get a good night's sleep, exercise, eat, talk to people, do chores, whatever, right? And so no one else wants to give up their night off. And they realize suddenly in this meeting that if they don't change something, they're going to have to end this because this guy is upset. And all of a sudden, you see the team come together as a team and start to really seek to understand what's going on for this guy and what's he doing and does it have to be this way and can we work differently? And they start prioritizing their work and planning in a very different way. And they start opening up about all sorts of issues. And you see this over the course of the next couple weeks, that this team becomes much more productive in how they're actually working together in the team. They start opening up about, not just we're going to have a night off, but all sorts of issues in their personal life. And it turns out my friend married to a doctor, he doesn't actually ever come to really like this night off in Indianapolis. But what he does like is that he comes to realize that he can raise an issue that he never would have raised before, which is, why do I have to be in Indianapolis so many nights a week? Could we actually change the travel schedule? Maybe you could be here 3 and I could be here 3 and we don't all have to be here every night. And they actually try that. And they realize that they can make very important changes for them in ways that significantly affect their life. And this, night off is just the trigger that's legitimating them to start raising all these different sorts of issues. And so when it's over, these guys have become big champions. And they're champions because they talk about their life being better. They talk about their work being better. They talk about being much more effective in how they work. The partner actually says, it's so much more than a night off. It turns out that we're actually, we care about each in a new way. We really understand each other, and we're trying to really rethink work in a way that will better help individuals on the team. We also are working in a way as a team that I have never seen a team work like this before. And he talked about how he deeply believed that this had a significant impact on the client as well. So after this experiment, needless to say, I had a little bit less difficulty finding other people to sign up and participate. And I stayed involved for the next, I did 4 of these experiments because, one is interesting, but I wanted to really see how this play out in different teams in different settings. And when my 4 experiments were over, I felt like I had convincing evidence that you could break this cycle and you really could create change. At which point, my friend, the head of the Boston office, who I'll call George, says to me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, you didn't want me to begin with, and you've kind of let me go." And at this point, BCG actually wakes up and says, this is actually kind of interesting. And they decided to really take over this initiative. And it went to 10 teams, and then to all of Boston office. And then the CEO got involved, and the executive committee. And they asked Debbie Lovich, who's here with me today, to take over and run this as a global initiative. And at this point, over 2,000 teams have been involved in this. It's in 32 offices in 14 countries. BCG has 27 people staffed on this initiative, facilitating it on their teams. And that might give you pause, and it might cause you to wonder, why are they putting this much into this initiative? And I just want to spend a moment and share with you a couple of the data points, which I think actually explain from their perspective why they're doing this. And so we call this initiative at BCG PTO, for predictable time off. And we survey these people all the time, the people who participated in PTO were 21% more likely to say they had control over their work lives. They were 47% more likely to find their work fulfilling. They were 45% more likely to intend to stay at BCG. And for BCG, this was the critical number. The fact that this was having such a profound effect on retention really meant to them that this is enabling people to work in a way that they didn't think they could before. It also had the people were 55% more likely to find their work processes efficient, 45% more likely to find their work effective, and 13% more likely to feel they were delivering significant client value. And for me, that was the critical number. They already were pretty high on how much value they think they deliver their client. So the fact that it would go up even more said to me, wow, we're having an impact on people's lives without undermining and actually enhancing the productivity of the client. And one of the things I actually have done is go out and interview the clients to confirm that this is actually having a positive effect for them as well. And I've gone on actually into other organizations to try to replicate this and understand what is the impact. But what I just want to end with today is talking a little bit about what does this mean for all of us? What do I take away from this? And what do I think the learnings are that then we might use in other organizations? Because at the essence, all we're doing is finding some small collective goal of personal value, right? This night off at BCG and other organizations, an afternoon, email blackouts, thinking time, something that rallies people together, and a structured conversation. 30 minutes once a week. And that's all we're doing. And we're bringing those two together. And what we're finding, team after team after team, and in organization now after organization, that what happens is this combination builds trust, it builds openness, it gets people to really start talking about both their work and their personal issues. And it also empowers them to do something about it. Because of that little collective goal, they learn that change is possible. They learn they can do something that they never thought they could do before. And so now they start making a whole series of changes that go far beyond wherever we start with that little goal. And so I think it's important to see in the work world, I come from organizational behavior, that's what I teach at Harvard, and we spend a lot of time trying to talk about and get organizations to focus on creating teams that are empowered, that speak openly, and that actually take ownership and make these kinds of changes. There's all sorts of initiatives from Lean to Six Sigma, team learning, organization learning that are all about this. We also struggle in organizations to make these actually work. And when they do work, we don't tend to invest the time we save in our lives. We reinvest it in the work. And what's different here is we're actually using the personal issue, which really motivates people to want to be involved, and it gets them to open up in a different way, and it's also sharing in the benefits. So we're really benefiting both work and life. All of this said, I do not think we are creating some nirvana of work-life balance. I mean, we're not. I don't want anyone to walk away thinking I'm claiming that, because we're just not, right? They say at BCG, it doesn't make a tough job easy, it makes a tough job better. But I think it is really important to recognize that we're having significant impact on the way people work and on their lives, enough that it's really impacting their intention to even want to stay with the firm. And for me, the fact that in such a small way at the team level, this is not about the CEO, this is not about some big organization initiative or big resources, this is about a team making change by themselves. That really inspires me to think about the possibility for all of us to engage in making that sort of change. And so what I just want to do is end by asking you to think about how you might do some of this on your teams. And my final word is only, if you do this, I'd love to hear about it, because I'd love us to learn together about the power of not just big organization initiatives, which are clearly important, but initiatives that can really start at the team level, and I think ultimately make a big impact on organizations. Thank you.